Oh, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the course on how to add a auto trade line. It was must requested, so I'm going to show you guys exactly how to add a auto trade line, basically a lease paid off on time being added to your credit so you can lease the cars, exotic cars, and basically be able to build your installment credit with a auto trade line, which is a lease. Okay, this is what banks want to see when you're renting out exotic cars. If you want to start renting exotic cars, or if you're already renting exotic cars, if you're looking to get multiple car notes, you might want to tune in. And this is a master class, so we're gonna go slow, nice and easy, step by step, one lesson through it all, and kind of take our time. So I'm sharing my screen right now, and we are on Swap Elise. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to go to Swap Elise. Swap Elise is basically a website that when someone wants to get out of their lease, they post their car here, they tell you the payments. Sometimes they give you cash incentives. Okay? Sometimes they give you cash incentives to take over a lease. You could take over small cars, exotic cars, big cars, small cars. It really don't matter. We're just here to add a lease trade line to our credit report. Now, mind you, most leases are 24 months, 36 months, 48 months. So when you're taking over these leases, you are now responsible for the new monthly payment. Okay. These are normally these are responsible people that want to swap a lease because they don't want to have a repossession on their credit. They probably ran out of the miles. They probably used the miles on the lease a little too much, and they don't want to be charged when they're giving the car back. So these are active automobiles that's on a lease that you can swap, being that you are your credit is accepted by the leasing company. So once you go to swap a lease, now you're looking for a lease to take over. Okay. As you see here, we see a 2024 Ford Bronco lease payment 359, 25 months left. That is not something you want to take over. You see, 29 months left, 18 months left. Do you want to take over the payment for 18 months? No. You just want to have the lease assigned to you, make a payment or two, and then the lease is done, give the car back, and now you have a paid off installment lease on your credit. Because it's just like a trade line. It's basically a trade line. You're basically taking over the lease payments. So whatever payments that they already have on that lease, you are now responsible. So let's go to, this is how you find a lease that you want to take over. You really want to go to months remaining, and you want to pick the minimum amount of months remaining as possible, which is 0 to 12. As you see, if I'm moving too fast, you can always stop and go back. So we got an Audi, 6 months left, but the monthly payments is 1,200. That is not what we're looking for. We're looking for months remaining 0 to 3, low as possible, low payments as possible as well. So eh, something like this BMW. So this BMW is a great lease to take over because it has 3 months left, which is only 468. This would have been a good lease to take over because it has, well, it was marketed that it had 3 months left, okay, which with a cash incentive of 693. Now that cash incentive is the owner giving you money to take over the lease. So the cash incentive is what you get in your pocket. So let's say your cash incentive is 693. You get that cash and you're responsible for the 492, 462 for 3 months left. Okay? You take over the lease. Chances are they're probably going to ship you the car. You definitely want the car in your possession. You don't have to register the car, but you do have to qualify with the leasing company. Normally on Swap a Lease, the leasing company is BMW Financial Services. BMW Financial Services is one of the top exotic and leasing companies. So you definitely want to get in good with them if you want a lease trade line, which is an auto trade line on your credit report. So how it works is you take over the lease, you get an incentive, you get it's $100 application fee. You contact the seller. The seller will then put you in contact with BMW Financial Services. You contact BMW Financial Services. There's a $100 application fee. You do have to be aware that the transfer restrictions, you cannot transfer in the final 6 months of the lease. Some exceptions may apply, so you may have to look for cars that have 6 months left on the lease and that have low payments. Don't worry, because the cash incentives normally helps you, but this is the easiest way to add a car on your credit. Okay, this is one of the easiest, fastest ways to add a car trade line is by taking over the lease. You know, you want to take over a lease with at least 6 months left on the payments, or maybe 3 months left on the payments. That way, when you're paying this, you're basically building up payment history, and it shows that you have a auto lease on your credit. Okay, so let's head back to a couple other options that you might have over here. So they say some of them have 1 month left, which is amazing. Let's click on the one that have 1 month left. Definitely, if you're taking over the lease, you don't want to take over a lease that has negative miles left, because when you're taking over, because most leases, they're given a set amount of miles. So if you look right here where it says negative miles left, that means this lease went over the miles allowed in the lease. And leases could get pretty expensive because once you go over the miles, they could charge you $2 a mile. So be very careful. Make sure that you take over a lease that has some decent miles on it. So let's modify the search. You want to take over a lease. You're looking for a car that has, let's do a new search so you can kind of see which cars, how to identify cars that you can take over the lease for a reasonable monthly payment. So you basically want to take over a lease with the monthly payment being between 0 and 500. So let's go to 0 and 500. Okay. And monthly payment. We got 0 to 500. Months remaining. You want to be anywhere between 0 to 12. 0 to 12. Okay. Now that you have 0 to 12, you can kind of narrow it down 4 to 6. This one is perfect. 6 months left on the lease. Cash incentive. All right. So these are perfect. This one right here, seller is offering a $230 cash incentive. Okay. $430. 6 months left on the lease. You do the math for the trade line. 4 times 6, it's about $2,400. So you got to look at it as if you're paying cash. $2,400. You would have a auto lease from Toyota Financial. You'll have an auto trade line reporting on your credit. Now, where the car is, you will have that car in your possession. So who knows what you can do with it. You can park the car, you can drive the car, but you're going to have a paid off auto lease on your credit by the time you take it over and the 6 months happen. Now, the incentive to take over is $230. These auto trade lines could run you anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000 depending on how many months is left on the lease, what's the monthly payments, and so forth. But you will be able to add a auto lease on your credit. So here's where it get a little tricky. Most leases, after they're due 6 months, you're no longer able to take it over. Like now, this one is perfect. Okay, this one is perfect. $386. 6 months left on the lease. Everything is looking beautiful, magnificent. My fiance is calling me. She probably needs some help. Don't worry about that. But yeah. So this is perfect. This is perfect. This is perfect. This is a perfect GM Financial. $386 a month. 6 months left. 3 times 6, 1,800. So now you got a 1,800. For $1,800, you have a auto lease that reports on your credit as paid off in full. The lease is going to show a auto trade line paid off. That's the secret for adding auto loans, auto trade lines. Swap a lease, find a car with a low monthly payment, 6 months left on the lease or less. That way, once you contact the seller, cannot transfer in the first 6 months or in the final 6 months. So you always want to make sure you get a car that has maybe 7 months on it with a decent payment. You're gonna be paying anywhere between $2,000 to $3,000, but it's gonna add a full lease. It's gonna show that you paid the lease off on time. It's not gonna show that the lease transferred. It's gonna show the auto lease was paid off. Even though you're coming in towards the end of the lease, it'll show that you paid, that you have a lease paid off in 6 months. Now, once the lease is reflected on your credit, it'll show that you have a lease active. Pay the 6 months up front, park the car up, you have a paid off lease on your report. And you can do this multiple times, it really doesn't matter. As long as your credit qualifies for the lease transfer, you'll be able to add the lease in no time. All right, guys, that is the master course on how to add a auto loan trade line to your credit score